once you've rolled the dice and completed the carbon cycle, data table, I haven't, but we're just going to go off of what I have for the sake of time. Once you've rolled the dice and completed this whole data table, your next step is to actually produce a visual model. So there are lots of different ways you can do this, and the bare minimum would be something like this, where you have pictures, you can draw them yourself, or you can find clip art or whatever, and you would put them around the paper. I'd like the location to be very clear and obvious of what it is, so make sure you label it. The very easiest way to do that would be to just write the words and put a box around it. A drawing would be helpful. And so I started, then you got to put what you did on here onto your model. You'll notice on the rubric that you need to have, in order to get full credit, you need to have all 11 storage areas on your model. So even if you never happen to make it, so let's say you never made it to deep earth, you still need to have that on the model. Okay, so I started at terrestrial producer. So I'm going to put just a little star here to indicate that that was my starting location. Okay. And then I'm going to draw an arrow basically from this thing to that thing to that thing to that thing. So I'm going to do terrestrial producer, and my next location was terrestrial consumer. So terrestrial consumers on my paper are here. And so I've drawn the arrow. Notice that you have to have the pointy part. If you don't have the pointer of the arrow, it's not an arrow, it's just a line, and it doesn't show how the carbon moved. It just showed a connection between the two. But we want to show that the carbon moved from the terrestrial producer to the terrestrial consumer. So I have to have an arrow. This is my first row, so I'm going to write a number 1 there. And then my process is predation. So on the line, I'm going to write predation. All right. Then from terrestrial consumer, so I've done that. I think I might just do a little check mark so I know I've done it. I'm at terrestrial consumer, and my next location is terrestrial consumer also. Well, how am I going to do that? It's kind of tricky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little loop like this to show that I'm making a move. I've rolled the dice, something is happening, there's a process there, but I'm going back to the same one. So this is my second row. Going to put that number there, and I'm going to label it with the process. The process also happened to be predation, so I'm going to write predation on here. And then I'm going to check that off as for having done it. And I'm going to write an arrow to my next location. So my next location is soil. So I'm going to write an arrow from my terrestrial consumer to the soil. And on there, I'm going to write, this is my third go round. And I'm going to write the process. And my process was decomposition. Now notice there are some that I have on here twice, but because the arrows are not between the same places, that's what I need to have. So now I've done soil, I'm at soil, I'm going to go to my next one, which is atmosphere. So I'm going to draw a line, once again, a line with the arrow. So a line from here. Notice how neatly I'm drawing it so that eventually these are going to be still easy to read, even if there's a lot of stuff on here. This was my 4th turn, so I'm going to write a 4 on there. And my process was decomposition, so I'm going to write that on the line. Now, let's say that my next location was listed as terrestrial producers again. So I would go back here with an arrow to terrestrial producers. That would be my 5th turn, and that process would be photosynthesis. Now let's say I'm at terrestrial producers, and it just so happens that I rolled the same number that caused me to go to terrestrial consumers via predation. I already have a line that says that. So rather than draw another arrow and make this a really busy diagram, since that would have been my 6th turn, I'm just going to write another number here to say that that's my 6th go round. And then I'm gonna keep going on. Eventually, hopefully, I cover and go to most of the stations. You won't hit every process, but once you've done the 36 lines, you should have a really good idea of what the model looks like. If you look at the back of the handout for this lab where your data table is, you'll see the rubric. You need to make sure that you have all 11 of the storage areas on your paper, even though you may not have gone to all 11. So if you never went to, say, deep earth, it'll still be on your paper, but you won't have any arrows going to or from it. All 36 processes that you use to transport carbon should be on there with their appropriate label. So you've got to have a point on your arrow. You should have the number of the roll that it was and the process label. When I grade these, I am mostly looking for, could carbon move from one storage area to another storage area via the process that you have? So without the arrows and without the processes, I can't really grade it. Finally, there are some points for style or for appearance. So it should be neat. Your handwriting should be legible. The arrows should be easy to read. You should have some drawings or some color. There should be some visual interest. If you are not artistic or a good drawer or have neat handwriting, you can create this on the computer. If you use any images, you must cite them, however. This would be an example of a final product that would get full credit. You have some drawings. The artwork is okay, it's neat, it's tidy. It's not a work of art or a masterpiece, but I can clearly see what all of the images are and clearly read it. Here's another example, just a different style. Both of these examples were made before I asked students to have the number on their line, which is why you don't see them here. Ignoring the lack of numbers on each line, both of these would earn full points. If you look at the rubric, you'll see that there's an opportunity for extra credit. To earn the extra credit, you would go the extra mile to really make it look visually interesting, maybe make it artistic. You could have some very neat drawings. If we look at this one, we can see that the person made it so that it looks like a landscape, and where the storage areas are logical compared to one another, rather than having them scattered throughout. When it comes to determining whether or not you've earned extra credit, size does not matter. So if you can do it neatly on a piece of paper, it does not need to be a poster. While I do want you to do a really nice job on this, I do also want you to gauge how much time you spend on it. There are a possibility of 2 extra credit points, so don't spend 17 hours making the most beautiful work of art for 2 points.